Hey up everyone, welcome to Yarkshire Gamers, a Reet Big Wargames podcast and episode 12. This has been recorded on the morning of the 14th of August 2021, just 3 hours before Bradford City's first home game of the season, so I'm looking forward to going out and having myself a tikka pie at half time, which is going to be fantastic. But this podcast is about wargaming. Well, bits of it are. So we shall be going along to our interview shortly, and today's episode is all about terrain, and who better to ask about that subject than the master himself, and that's David Marshall from TM Terrain. So we'll be popping over and having a chat with him shortly. A little bit of housekeeping before we go, just to let you know that I've been, with 3 weeks in between this one and the previous podcast, I've been doing a bit of planning, and I'm quite surprised myself actually, but with all the people we've got in and some of the new stuff that's coming up, I've probably only got one available slot for a guest, possibly two, between now and the new year, which is a great place to be in, and lots of guest ideas going forward. Probably enough for another year or so, and with some of the new features that are coming up, the long-term future of the podcast looks pretty good. Whether we'll continue with the 2-week recording schedule or not, I'm going to have to review as we go along, but for the moment it's looking good, looking really good. There's a couple of new formats for the show coming up that I'm going to chat about after the interview. Just in other news, Leeds Wargames Club is now back open, and we had an open day a couple of weekends ago. I was trying to do some recording there, but sadly just things happened, and I didn't get a chance to speak to people. I'm hoping to get 5-10 minutes with Andy and Ian from Leeds Wargames Club, just to chat about Hicks Hall and the history of the club, which hopefully will be in the next episode. So, without further ado, let's go to our interview.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 12 of the Reet Big Wargames podcast. And after going all intercontinental on you for the last couple of episodes, when we've been to Australia and the good old USA, we're coming back home. And where better to come back home than to a lad who grew up in God's own? We're in the right place here. And today's guest can be described as many things, and I've got a list here, and that is the master of the plastic card. He has a black belt in weathering. He is the principal of the resin water feature, a dab hand with a dry brush, and a dashing fellow with an airbrush. Please welcome the king of the diorama, Mr. TM Terrain himself. It's a big, huge white rose welcome to David Marshall. Hello, David.
Thank you. Gosh, that's a nice introduction. Cheers, Ken.
Now, I've not set you up to fail there, have I, mate? You're not going to disappoint after that.
I'm all okay except the airbrush. I'm not quite a master of that one.
Oh, hey, I've seen some of it. I've seen some of your airbrush weathering. It looks good, mate. Don't.
Yeah, yes. I need to. I need to service my airbrush. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, we could talk about how. What a pain in the backside airbrushes are later on, I'm sure. We had a brief chat before we came on air, and you've done a couple of interviews before, haven't you? Some time ago now, and that was with the sadly no longer Meeples and Miniatures. That was very, very classic show. And you've done a bit of a YouTube thing with the terrain tutor as well.
Yes, I have. Yeah. Both were great fun. Thoroughly enjoyed them. Any excuse to talk about terrain and toy soldiers, really, eh?
Exactly. What more do we need?
Absolutely.
So, you've had to listen to one of the episodes, the one with Nick Skinner, which is classic. So you'll know what's coming up next. The first thing...
Not worried at all.
Not worried at all. The first thing we like to do... Well, we've not got to the quiz yet. You need to worry about that.
I know. I have to worry about that one.
So the first thing we like to do is put people under a little bit of pressure. And we're going to talk to you about your terrain building and everything towards the end of the podcast. Just summarise for me, if you can, your kind of war games history. And just to make it interesting, we're going to do it in 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So no pressure, mate.
I did think about having a stopwatch, but I'm going to just do it.
You're going to wing it and see how you get on. Brilliant. Let's see what your estimation of time is like.
Okay.
All right, Dave. 3, 2, 1. Off you go.
Off we go. Well, I'm 57, and I think listening back to Nick Skinner, you're a similar sort of age. So I would imagine a lot of this will be similar. But my life is centered around soldiers, really. I think people tell you remember about music or stuff like that. For me, it's soldiers. I remember I was 6, lived down south at that time, so apologies for that. But I remember my first 2 boxes of Airfix figures: World War I German infantry, American Civil War artillery. Yeah, and I was 6, and it's sort of going on from then, really.
Yeah,
we moved, collected Airfix soldiers when I could, when they were 17, 19p a box. That was all my pocket money went in that, and then get the occasional kit. But no idea about painting. It was just getting figures and putting them on the putting on the carpet and rolling marbles out and stuff like that. But I think the key moment that got me into wargaming, my aunt bought me Bruce Quarry's Napoleonic Wars.
Oh, classic.
One of those A5 things, and they had pictures of metal figures, and in the back they had addresses for where to get stuff. Yeah. And I remember I wrote to Hinton Hunt, Hinchliffe Models, and Minifigs. Hinchliffe came back with the catalogue, and I went with them. Yeah. So again, my first order was 36 British mounted dragoons, all Napoleonic, 18 lifeguards, and 12 Scots Greys. And that was when I was about 11 or 12. And by then I was living in South Cay, just outside Hull. Yeah. I don't know and I remember waiting for the postman and all that sort of thing. So that was how that all started. And then the rules were in there as well. So we started rolling that. And then the first show I went to, which started getting into the terrain, was at Hull's Station Hotel.
Yes, I remember that one.
That was probably mid-70s, I'd have thought. And I remember seeing a 54mm cowboy game, probably run by Ian Beck. And I remember the terrain. It was a big table, and that was it. And I remember I came home and I built my first built a canteen. And it's sort of just gone on from there, really. Yeah. And when I went to university, I took my painting table and found a club there and started playing there. Then when I met my wife, the next day I was wargaming. It's never been not part of my life. It's sort of flowed a little bit, but I've been pretty much a club member. I was at Derby, I played there a lot, and then finally moved to Loughborough, where I am now, and just joined the club there. And we played all sorts of different things, and from big games, little games, skirmish games, board games. I'll try anything really, but it's all related to, I think, the look of the game. And I just found that I had a knack for building stuff and making stuff. And I found that being around Loughborough, near Nottingham, the centre of the world for wargaming. Yeah,
the Nottingham Mafia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Duncan McFarlane. So I was very sad about the news a little while ago about Duncan. But I got into the magazine there and stuff like that, and it just carried on from there. And I can hear the countdown now. And so it's been toy soldiers and terrain building all my life, really, and I don't regret a minute of it.
Brilliant.
Not a minute of it. So
that's the end of the music coming in now. Perfect time.
Well, perfect. Well, that was it. Yeah, not bad. Phew, good.
Well, that's a classically well-timed one, that I have to say.
Thank you very much.
You've done really well there. The first guest ever, Chris Breeze, works in media, and he was absolutely spot on, but that was expected of him, whereas others have been either dreadfully short or dreadfully too long. But I think it's a nice icebreaker at the start to get people into.
I was worried I'd be too long because things can get I could go on a bit.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. So can I. Mentioning those old Airfix figures and those first boxes that you got, those the World War I German set, didn't that have two guys running along with like a ring of barbed wire between, or was that the British set?
I think that was the British one.
Was that the British set?
Remember the Germans had a lovely machine gun set.
They did, yeah,
yeah. That was brilliant, and they all had the pickle helmets, didn't they? Which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I can. And I remember them in grey plastic, and I remember the artillery in ready plastic.
Yeah.
And there was a limber and 2 or 3 guns. It was great, and I just played. That was, who cared?
Exactly. I one of my earliest toy soldier memories is with that World War I German set, because I remember we'd go down on a Saturday and buy a box, and I remember I lost like an officer or something from it into the fire grate, and I was absolutely distraught. I mean, probably 5 or 6 or something like that. And I remember being driven down to the shop to get another box. I was that distraught. It's like, Christ, get him another box, shut him up quick. So it's great to hear a similar background to myself. So we were just talking there about our early experiences, and you said you went off to university and carried on gaming there. Where did you go?
That's right. Yes. I went to Trent Poly, as it was then, in Nottingham. When I left, I packed my clothes and my paints. So wherever I went, I'd always have my paint. And of course, in Nottingham there was tabletop games. Was it with Bob Connor?
Bob Connor, TTG, and Bruce Reet Taylor.
Yeah, and that was I lived in the centre of town for the first year, and so it was a bit of a trek out Mansfield Road there, but it was one of those trips you just had to do. So, and that was a brilliant shop there. So I remember buying some 15mm Huns, and I did get them painted and played with a couple of times. So that was quite successful. Yeah, and found a club there. Met Bob Amy and a few guys there, and Bob Connor went there, and that sort of kept me going for 3 years at uni. Anywhere I went, top of the list. Take my paints, find a club.
Exactly. It's top of everyone's list. Everyone's list.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier these days than I think I found the Leeds club in a 2-line advert in the back of Miniature Wargames or something like that.
Right.
Ring this number if you want a hot War Games time in Leeds, that sort of thing.
Well, it's weird. I mean, I lived in Loughborough for ages before I found the Loughborough club, and that was through, because I still drove to Derby to the club there, and I found the Loughborough club through one of my customers.
Yeah.
So I did a bit of work for him. He said, "Oh, by the way, I'm in Loughborough," and that was it. So yeah, they're not all easy to find. I think maybe the trick is that our Loughborough club is called Sons of Simon de Montfort. So if you Google Loughborough Wargames Club, you just don't find anything.
Ah, right. So it's kind of hiding under a pseudonym then.
Yes.
Do you have a gaming set up at home, or do you do most of your gaming at club?
It's all at the club. We sort of converted the loft, boarded it out and stuff like that, and that was going to be the gaming room, and I'd have got an 8x6 up here. But very shortly after that, I set up TM Terrain, so it just became the studio. So I lost the gaming then. So I do the odd little game, because I do play little 4x4 skirmish games sometimes.
Yeah. So
we could play those on the kitchen table, but generally it's at the club. Yeah.
So what's life like at Loughborough Wargames Club?
Well, I really enjoy it. I mean, we have a room at Bow Manor Hall, so it's quite a historical hall. It's run by the council, so we have a nice arrangement with them. And it was an old. I'm not sure if I got quite the details right, but it was a listening station, and during World War II, and all the buildings were disguised as haystacks and stuff like that. So
brilliant!
It's quite an interesting historical building, and we're in sort of a stable block in one of those, and we meet Mondays and Wednesdays. And then we also have the options for weekend games, and we play all sorts of stuff. There's not loads of us, but we play anything. I think Blood Bowl, big games, little games, science fiction, anything really. And we're all flitty and, all shiny and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So, usual stuff.
Is that your place alone, or do you share that with other clubs and societies?
I think it's the only club. I think we do share it with a nursery.
Oh, because you can definitely can't leave stuff up there.
No, we can't leave stuff. No, everything has to go, and we have to put everything back as it was.
You can imagine a load of little 5-year-olds running around with your beautifully built terrain pieces.
Yes, that would not go down very well. But yeah. So yes, we have to put everything back. They're pretty flexible on weekends. So as long as we give them enough notice, it's often okay. But again, that we do sometimes share that with birthday parties, I think, stuff like that. But otherwise, it's a pretty good arrangement.
So what's your go-to thing when you're gaming then? What's your sort of favourite periods?
I think my favourite period long term is American Civil War. I think I keep coming back to that. I'll go away and do other stuff, but I keep coming back to it. And I've played it in 6mm. 12mm, 15mm, 20mm, 25, 40, and I may have done it in 54, but I'm not sure. I don't think so. So and I like sharps practice with that, and Fire and Fury, both regimental and divisional size. I played Johnny Reb. So I'll do all sorts of. I think what dragged me into that period was the photographs. I love those black and white posed photographs of the guys go to studios before they go off to. I just loved all that. It just really dragged me in. Very atmospheric. So and you're not short of stuff to read about the American Civil War either.
No, because that was one of the first wars that photography was involved in, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and Matthew Brady was a well-known photographer, and he used to go around with his wagon and set up and do after battle shots and stuff like that. It was really interesting. It was I had a photographer friend, and we tried recreating. He was into retro photography.
Yeah.
We did the same sort of photography style as they did then, and it's very interesting photographing figures that way, because it's an infinite. Oh, now I shouldn't be talking photography really, because I don't really know. Dangerous. I know a little bit. It just seemed to give an infinite depth of field with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was remarkable, really, for just such a simple for such a simple technology. But but then World War II, I enjoy. I've got 15 and 20mm, 28mm armies of that. But I like the Too Fat Lardies for that sort of thing, but Battleground for that sort of bigger scale game. And Ancients I enjoy, but I enjoy Ancients in a different way than I do American Civil War. Ancients, I have no interest in the history of it.
Yeah,
I just love the figures,
right?
And I love getting loads of stuff on the board.
Yeah.
Just rolling dice, really. So I like Hail Caesar with that. So I try and read ancient history, and it just will not go in. It just will not stick. So I just enjoy playing with toy soldiers with that. Those are my main ones, but I am terribly flitty.
You don't stick to stuff and just move around then.
No, and it's sort of the good old days were when you'd get an army and you'd play with it for a couple of years, and you wouldn't get tempted with other stuff. But today it's both great and a pain that you get all this temptation to do other stuff. I think complaining about today's state of the war game is a bit disingenuous, really. It's brilliant, really.
So you're part. Obviously, we're going to go talk about your terrain building in the last section of the show. But looking through your Facebook and various bits and pieces, you also do some commission painting as well, don't you?
I do a bit. It's a nice, I won't say distraction, and it's not my main thing, because I describe myself as a wargaming style painter. I've got infinite patience for my terrain. I have limited patience for figure painting, but so I try. I don't spend hours on a figure, and so I have a couple of regulars that I work for.
How do you manage that with the day job of the terrain and doing stuff for yourself? I'm always interested when I speak to people who work in the hobby, who also have it as a hobby, how they divide their time between their own projects and ones that pay the gas bill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main thing is that I've kept my hobby, even though I make it's my job. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I still love the hobby. I think as far as terrain building goes, I don't do any for myself other than MDF buildings.
Yeah.
That's the only way I found I can, a collection of my own terrain is buying MDF or Tabletop World stuff or Grand Manor before he only did painted stuff. I don't make scratch built stuff for myself. Painting wise, I will just paint in the evenings. I try and leave an evening a week that is for painting, or because I'll have a couple of evenings where I'm doing emails and quotes and stuff like that, and then I try and get out and game as well. Yeah. So it's usually just one evening a week. Sometimes I can get a Saturday afternoon or something like that, but I aim to try and do a 28mm figure in 10 minutes, quarter of an hour.
Yeah.
So I think I can get through quite a few, and I'll also happily do 100 at a time. So I'll do all the jackets one night and then I'll come back in. So that's how and occasionally, if I'm doing commission painting and I've got the same figures of my own on the board, on the painting table, then I'll do mine at the same time as I'm doing theirs. So that's how
I was going to ask you about the technique and the process, because I've spoken to quite a few people now on here, and everyone's got their own little way. So are you a kind of a big production line kind of guy, doing all the boots one night and trousers the next? And
I am really. It does depend a little bit on what I'm painting, but generally that's my most productive way of doing it. I'll do, because I mentioned I do some of these smaller skirmish games.
Yeah.
Although I've decided I'm stopping doing those because they really are flitty, shiny. It's just. But if I'm doing, if we're doing those, then I'll do maybe 3 or 4 of those at a time. Or Crooked Dice, I love their figures. Carl does a terrific job with his rules and the figures. So at the minute, I've got a selection of his figures on my painting table and so I've got his town guard, which are medieval, and then I've got some post-apocalyptic stuff, some sort of hero-y stuff, some pulpy stuff. So I can't do a production line with that, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. But generally, if I want to paint volume, it's boots tonight. That's it.
Well, those figures that Carl does from 7TV are absolutely superb, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I do work for Carl, and he said, "Do you want some figures? You'll pay me, and then do you want some figures as well?" So I'll go on then. And I've got so many of his, and they just delight to paint. Oh, they're just lovely. And
Are you an acrylics paint man or enamels?
Yeah.
Or what's your style?
No, I have an issue with solvents. Over the years, I've become quite susceptible to solvents.
Yeah.
So I stopped using enamels before I was allergic or whatever to them. I probably started acrylics. Well, when do you think Vallejo started to appear in the UK?
It must be 15, 20 years ago, maybe longer.
Because I think that's when they started to appear then, and I think I was quite early on with them.
Yeah.
So I've probably been with that for that sort of length of time.
In fact, it's probably longer than that now, thinking about it. I'll probably push it back 25 years.
Yeah. Vallejo appealed to me because they were the squidgy bottles.
Yeah.
And I could never get to the bottom of a humble pot of paint without it drying out. And so it really annoyed me. But that was a reason. And I've stuck with Vallejo pretty much ever since. I like their stuff. I've started to use Wargames Foundry range. I like their stuff.
Yeah, the tryouts.
And then I get the odd. Then I'll get Games Workshop as well, but in an emergency because we have a Games Workshop in Loughborough. So if I'm out of black and I've got and I need it, then I'll get a pot of black from them. That sort of. So
I'm talking. This is a bit of one of my guilty pleasures here, and I think you might get this as well. Do you kind of enjoy going into Games Workshop and just buying one paint and seeing the guys look when you kind of go, no, I don't want a £200 box of Mega Space Marines. I just want a tin of black paint, please.
Yes. I do enjoy that. Or paintbrush. Yes, I need a paintbrush. Yeah. Well, they're going. What are you into? Yeah, what's 40k? No. I'm 50 mil Huns, whatever. Huh?
Yeah, if anyone listening, I encourage you to go into your local Games Workshop and just buy a single paint or a paintbrush, as Dave suggests, and whatever you can come up with the most ridiculous army that you've suggested to them when they ask. Post it on Twitter and let us know, because that hashtag wind up per GW.
Baiting Games Workshop stuff. Oh dear.
Right, so we've caused a bit of trouble, which is what we like to do every now and again on here. So when I do talk to people in this section, I like to try and define what sort of because the hobby itself, as you know, being a terrain maker, is quite broad. So if we're looking at the wargamer, the painter, the collector, and the historian in you, how do those four things mix together, and what's prominent, what's kind of at the back of the queue?
I was thinking about this, and I think historical is probably at the back of the queue.
Yeah,
I enjoy reading and the photographs of the American Civil War. I'm not a massive reader generally. I pick and choose. And I think other things get my juices going more than the historical stuff. So, and I think the painting, I put that as creative, really. Yeah. As a more of a bigger umbrella. And I think I have to say the creative side of it is probably the most important thing to me. Yeah. But I couldn't really. I found it very difficult to split the creative, the wargaming, and the. What was the third one?
Wargamer, painter, collector, historian.
Yeah. So I think collecting probably behind wargaming and painting creative, and then wargaming, and then collecting, and then history. I think. Yeah. I think that's the way it goes. I think if I can be tempted by the look of figures, by the look of terrain. Yeah. I can forgive a game a lot if it looks great. I can, and I think even the look of a game over that might. I was going to say over the look of figures, but I think they work together. Yeah. And I think if you've got lovely terrain and crap figures, then it brings a whole lot down, and the other way around as well. So I don't think I'm right with that, but so that's I think that's the way it goes for me.
Yeah, that's and what's your current personal Wargames project, or you got loads on the go? What's the thing that you're working on at the moment?
Well, what I've got on the painting table, so I've got the cookie dice stuff, but I've also the Game of Thrones game from Simon, Call Me or Not. Yeah, right, I enjoy painting those. I've got to be in the mood to play the game. Yeah, because it is quite precise, which isn't always up my street. But I forgive it a lot because it's got some lovely mechanisms about you can use off-board figures for sort of politics and stuff like that. So, and the figures do look gorgeous. So that's what I'm painting at the moment. But as far as sort of preparing for projects, we're playing quite a lot of World War II smaller scale. We've started playing Blitzkrieg Commander, and we're really enjoying that. Really at our age, realistically, between your mates, you've pretty much got everything, haven't you?
You have.
So, and it's been interesting with lockdown and stuff. I started recording what I was painting and recording what I was buying. And
nice.
I found it a very useful project. And I even went as far as counting my lead mounting.
Yeah.
And it's given me a lot of self-discipline. So I haven't bought anything seriously as a new project for ages. Well, and my new sort of project seed and juices are always fulfilled with my commission work. It's weird. So at the minute, I'm just pottering, enjoying getting rid of my lead mounting, and it is so therapeutic. It's so
So,
I mean, do you have a lead mount? You must have a lead mounting.
Yeah, I do. And I kind of started. I started a thing on the side of my blog about 7 or 8 years ago, doing exactly what you're saying there. The number of figures I've bought, and then the number of figures I've painted. And what's really, really worrying is that I have painted probably 200, 300, 400 more a year each year than I've bought, and I still have a lead mounted.
Yes. How does it?
Because
I don't know. I think they multiply. I don't think it's our fault at all.
No, definitely.
It happens. No.
So I counted the number of figures that I had painted, but I didn't count the lead mounting.
Right. Oh no, I can't bring myself to count the number of figures I got painted. I don't know whether that would be psychologically good for me or not. I don't know. I think the lead mounting count was very good because it was smaller than I expected, and it was small enough to think that by the end of this year I could clear it. But that was, as it turned out, unrealistic. Anyway.
Are you prepared to share with fellow addicts listening what your lead mounting total is?
Well, it was only
I like that.
500 or 600 figures.
That's very
really
good.
Too bad, was it?
Yeah, that's very good.
I was surprised, and I was as honest as I could. I think I was honest. I think I've got sort of like a box in the back of his drawer full of bits and pieces, and I didn't count those. But everything that and that included. I had some interesting sort of decisions to make. What do you count a 10mm figure, or what do you count a 12mm figure? Is that 228? Is that a 28mm figure, or do you count? So that was yes, all sorts of very important questions like that have to be answered.
I think there needs to be a national adjudication committee.
Absolutely,
for all these questions, because they're very, very important to many people.
I think we decided as our group, because we all sort of got involved in it, that you count the millimeters and divide the millimeters. So a 6mm is 4/28.
Oh, I like that.
A 12mm is 2/28. That sort of thing. It's it's done us all right. So,
so are you a hoarder when it comes to figures? Then do you keep all your stuff, or do you manage to let some go over time?
I have sold stuff in the past. Some I've regretted. Some I've been okay with.
Yeah.
The one big regret was a English Civil War Wargames Foundry army, and I got rid of that. And that was, I wish I hadn't. But otherwise, I'm okay with it. And I think I'd like to sell, I think, my 15mm World War II. So I think my days with 15mm are over.
Yeah.
I don't like the scale anymore. But it's just getting off your backside and selling them, really. I found some of the bring and buys, the Yorkshire, where you can hire a table.
Yeah.
And Hammerhead. That I found to be really good for selling stuff rather than eBay and things like that. I just can't be bothered to do it. So so probably a bit more hoarder, but it's not because I hoard it. Well, I can't be asked to sell them. But
that's better than having the regrets, isn't it? Because
it is.
One guy I spoke to a couple of episodes ago, John Lander, he had a beautiful 28mm Wars of the Roses army that he sold before he emigrated to the States. Got
Right.
to the States and then immediately regretted selling it. Rang the guy back who he sold it to up, rebought it from him, and then shipped it to the USA. So that is proper regret, that, isn't it?
Wow, that is, yeah. No, I don't think I'd go that far, because I mean, part of it is just selling it for more space. So you sort of get it in your head that I've got more space now to fill. So yeah, I've just had to. You just get used to the regret, don't you?
Yeah.
And don't do it again.
Don't do it again. That's a very, very, very good lesson. We'll just have a quick short break there for the audience, and we'll come back in a second with our normal second part chat on big games. So in the second part of the show, we like to talk about big games, but just in the break there, we were having a laugh and a joke about our little Games Workshop wind-up. So if anyone would like to go into their local shop and try and buy a single dice, or what was your suggestion, Dave? Was it
one of those pots of sand that they sell as a base texture? I'm sure that's that must be one of their smallest things they sell.
You could walk in with a bag of builder's sand, couldn't you, and go, I've got, how much do you want to buy this off me for? Because that's like, I don't know how much they charge for their tiny pot of builders.
I don't know.
I do like to have a laugh with the guy behind the thing. So we're rapidly moving on before we get one of those deceased and desist notices from Games Workshop. So we'll talk about big games then. So when I say big game, what comes into your mind? What's your
big table, lots of people? I think that's what I would consider as a big game. Yeah, I was thinking about it the last 24 hours or so, and I think that's what always pops into my head, and I think so. I don't think it's the scope of the game necessarily, because you can play massive scopes of games with just two players on small tables, but it's maybe loads of figures as well. That's how.
What's your first sort of memory then? What can you remember the first time you saw a game and went, bloody hell, look at that?
I think there was a group of guys that did the show circuit for Yonks. Did massive Napoleonic games.
The songs.
That's it.
Shelley Oaken District Wargames Society.
Yeah, and you'd look at those and they were just wow. I must admit the memorable games that shows aren't necessarily big games, but that's maybe that's another thing. But so I think, really, I suppose going back to the show I mentioned in Hull all those years ago at the Station Hotel, that Wild West game. When you're young, everything's big, isn't it? Really?
It is, yeah.
Everything's bigger than it really is. But that was probably my first experience of a big game. It just seemed to be enormous. The buildings were big. There were people all around it having a great time. The figures were big. That was probably my first experience of big games. But I think my main experience with big games are at shows. I haven't been to any holiday centres or to any special gaming places. So it's pretty much all it shows. And then the Loughborough Club do the big games on Sundays sometimes, which I've sort of got out of the habit of going to, which is it's funny, just a bit disappointing really. You just get out of the habit. And
what sort of things do Loughborough or did they or do they put on?
Well, no, they still do. But big games is, what do they do? Quite a lot of World War II, smaller scale. So a lot of 10, 12 mil World War II. One or two chaps can put on quite a nice size Ancients game. I've in the past have put on naval games. I've got a nice collection of, what scale are they? 1/700. So the same scale as Black Seas from Warlord. Yeah. But Skytrex used to do a lovely range, Trafalgar range of 1/600.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of those, and we played some big games of that, but that was big because the ships were like 5 inches long.
Yeah.
We're trying to do like Trafalgar, just humongous. And we converted a board game, Close Action was called, and that was a hex-based game. So we used the Hexon stuff from
Callistra, is it?
From Callistra.
Yeah.
So they're 10 centimeters across. So that's converting a hex on the board game that's a centimeter across to something 10 centimeters. So it was just that was just a big game. And we've converted board games into larger games and things like that. So it's quite a selection. But I haven't really been involved in those big games for a long time. I think I get involved in big games through customers.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I've really. I don't know. You just fall out of the habit. It's weird.
Some of us haven't. So was it part of your younger gaming life then? Were you hordes of Napoleonics across a huge table over a weekend?
I did. I was lucky enough to have quite a lot of space at home, so we could play quite large games there. But I've just thought about hordes of Napoleon. When I was still lived at home, we found a club in Hull. It was at a school, and I can't remember the name of the school, things like that. And I don't know, I was probably 13, 14, 15. And I remember they put on a big Napoleonic game it was in the hall. So it must have been, I don't know, 30, 40 feet long, just tons of figures. And I went both days and I just sat and watched for the whole weekend. So that was I think that was quite a sort of typical really of my, how important the soldiers were in my life. Yeah. I could just sit and just enjoy, watch it. And they didn't interact with me at all. They didn't, not like it would be today. They just got on with playing, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I've also put on larger games for shows. So again, based around nice looking terrain. So one large game I would describe as a large game, but it wouldn't fit my definition of it being a big table. Yeah. Because it was on 8x6, but it was an Indian Mutiny game. And it was a game we put on probably in the 90s. And it was 8x6, and the idea was it was participation, and it was so successful. It was designed for like 5 players a side, and I built a wall that the mutineers were going to attack, and the British Europeans were trying to withdraw to a boat and get away. And there was all sorts of things happening. And there was only a British commander would only have a unit of 10, but it was up to him to. So so it wasn't a big command, and I don't know if it was card driven or whatever, but it was just mayhem. And it was designed for about 10, and it was so we had 15. We were digging figures out from regurgitated dead, all sorts, because it was so popular. So that I think I would class as a big game. And I think the big games I've mainly been involved in and most enjoyed have been the games we put on for shows.
And is that the social aspect of it then coming into the fore?
I think so. I think social stuff plays a really important part for me. Full stop. And it's sort of highlighted with the situation over the last year. I get really grumpy if I don't enjoy the game. Yeah. And I think it's sort of because you have limited gaming time, and I feel I should enjoy every game that I play. Yeah. And I don't always, and I get grumpy with it. And it's usually you haven't played the right sort of it's just the social side is usually the thing that hasn't worked out. And so going to shows is great. And there's a bit of you're proud of putting a game on, aren't you? Yeah. And if people are enjoying it, you enjoy seeing people enjoy it, and all of that sort of thing. And it's a culmination of planning a large project. It's great to see that the deadline you've hit, regardless of that you've been painting on the Friday night and the figures are still half wet, but you've made it. So I think that's where I get most of my big gaming stuff.
Is there
experience.
a group of you then who do those games at shows, or is
There are,
it
yes.
by yourself?
Yeah, because I sort of can't commit heavily to a lot of stuff because in my head I have to do my, I have to pay the mortgage.
Yeah, the gas bill and all boring stuff like that.
And so I'm involved with the group, but I'll paint figures or I'll help, but I don't. The enthusiasm comes from somewhere else, and that's I just can't. 20 years ago, before TM Terrain, I could do the whole thing. I'd build a Wild West town. I could do the Indian Mutiny thing. That wouldn't be a problem. But now I have to. I have to be realistic, really, and sort of take a back seat and just sort of help out, and just enjoy enjoy getting involved, but not heavily.
Yeah. And do you go mainly to Slough, or do you sort of do a world tour?
We do. Yeah, we've done Salute for the last few years. We enjoy that. We go down on the Friday, set up hotel, and so it's a lovely weekend. But we do Hammerhead, because that's our local shows, and we do. Oh, I was going to say we do Partisan, but we haven't done Partisan for a while. And we used to do Derby. I think that's
dropped off the calendar now, hasn't it?
It has now, yeah. We did Derby when it was did we start doing that when it had moved to Donington? And then we did the one when it moved to out in the sticks.
The one when the one where it was nearly in London.
Yeah, that one.
Because I did that. I took my Jutland game to that, and
right.
And I was saying to my friend, "Are you sure this is the Derby show?" As we were driving down, and the miles kept. I said, "We're nearly in London."
That whole thing. Yes, it was very strange, that one.
Shame that show's gone.
We don't do. Yeah, we tried other ones, but we've been to Crisis. Yeah. That was good. That's a brilliant. You stay for a few days and do a bit of battleground walking and things like that. So we pick and choose, and sometimes, some years we just about get to Salute. The enthusiasm isn't there because there's a lot of effort, and you need someone who just gets enthused with a project. You can't say we're going to do this. Come up with something, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't flow unless someone is enthused with it. So,
Brilliant. Well, just to finish off this little section, then I always ask people if they've got any advice or suggestions for people who are new into gaming or relatively new to the historical side of things about doing a big game, as opposed to most people are coming in now from Games Workshop, which are more of a skirmish type game. Is there any advice, or just don't do it?
Definitely don't. Definitely go for it.
Yeah.
But I would maybe don't bite off too much. I think you need to be enthusiastic about whatever you choose. You've got to want to do it, haven't you?
Yeah.
There's no point if you just half-hearted at it. And if you're coming from skirmish games, don't suddenly go to a 30-foot table with 3,000 figures and that sort of thing. Build up, really, and maybe look at it as a long-term plan of maybe 2 or 3. Sounds bad, but 2 or 3 years, really.
Yeah.
And make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because if you bite off too much, you're going to lose your enthusiasm. If you don't really enjoy it, then you're not going to keep doing it. If all of those, if you're not enthusiastic about what you're doing, you're not going to do it. So all those 3: enthusiasm, realism. I had a third thing: realism and enthusiasm. I think are probably the thing. And just don't be put off and just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really important because obviously I tend to do things on a larger scale here, and people will see it on the internet and go, "Wow, that's great! I want to do that." And then I'll say, "Well, it's taken me 6-7 years to get to that point," and it's like, "Well, no, I want to do my game next weekend." That's just not realistic. It's a lot, and when you've been gaming for 35-40 years. 2 or 3 years on a project isn't a massive amount of time.
No,
if you've just started, then 2 or 3 years seems like forever, doesn't it?
It does.
And
there's lots of things that sort of intermediate that you can build up to. So, I mean, I was listening to you talk to Nick last night, and how you use Sharp's practice and infamy. You can get into Napoleonics or ACW or Ancients with just 100 figures, make the board, look nice, a 6x4 board, and present it to a show and see what the reaction is, see whether you enjoy it and stuff like that. You've got 100 figures, and next year you can, 200 figures and so on, and just build it up that way. And you might find you like the idea of it, but it's just like pulling teeth and horrible, and you just don't enjoy that sort of thing, or you don't enjoy talking to people, or you don't, whatever. And there's no point going out and buying 1,000 figures, and it's just ended up on your lead mount, is it? I know everybody does, but
especially when your lead mounting's as low as 400 or 500, mate.
Yeah. I mean, it just would be soul destroyed. I'm nearly there. I bought 1,000 figures for. Yes, it's ridiculous. Yeah, just realism and but enjoy it. Yeah. Great, that will be my thing.
Great advice, mate. Well, we'll take a little break there, and then it's time for our little quick fire quiz. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Another person to have a go at the Yorkshire Gamer quiz. And the usual disclaimer in that my thoughts and feelings on this are not necessarily the correct ones, although being from Yorkshire, I will insist that they are. So this is no right or wrong answers in this, as they say to the kids these days when they do their exams. So there's no pressure on you here, mate. We've yet to decide whether a big score is a good result or a small score is a big result. But we've got between 60 and 90. Everyone has so far.
Right. Okay. Yes, it confused me listening to Nick last night.
Yeah.
Was that good or bad?
Exactly. So it's all about opinion. It's all about opinions. So it's either straightforward yes or no, or one of two answers that I'll give you.
Okay, go on then.
So
go on. I'll do my best.
So the first question is: go big or go home?
Go big.
Go big. Contrast paints, are they great or are they a gimmick?
I've never used them, so I would say a gimmick, but a friend of mine uses them and it's great. So I don't know.
Tough one already.
Yes.
So first regionally biased question, and that is choosing paintbrushes. Would you go for Winsor and Newton or Yorkshire made Pro Art?
Pro Art.
Oh, brilliant. 96 figures. Is that an army or a pipe block?
That's an army.
6x4 table. Is that a big game or a small game?
Small game.
When organising a game, do you prefer points-based or historical order of battle?
Probably historical, but points have their place.
Oh, interesting. Another controversial painting question here. Do you use a wet palette or an old bit of MDF to mix your paints?
It's a CD. I've tried a wet palette, enjoyed it, but just got out of the habit of using it. I've been painting too long to get out of my habits. So I use a CD. Yeah. So that's
brilliant. Did you find like bits of mold and crest growing in your wet palette after a while?
Yeah. And it would, and all the paints would blend into one, and you'd open it up and it would smell a little bit, and so.
Yeah, excellent. We're no fan of the wet palette here on this show.
Yeah, no, I can't. Yeah.
When you're undercoating your figures, do you go black or white?
Always white. Can't get on with black. Yeah.
I think we've discussed this by email, and you might fail this question. Having a cup of tea or a dirty mucky coffee?
Coffee, I'm afraid.
Oh,
I could expand on that, but this is just a yes or no.
So when you're making up a Wargames unit, do you like your figures tightly packed or socially distanced?
Ooh, tightly packed, I think. Yeah, tightly packed.
Excellent. You're choosing a length of time for a game. Are you going for a 2-hour club game or a weekend monster game?
I would say a 2-hour club game usually. 2-hour club game.
Another potential failure on this one. The Nick Skinner honourable question. That's avocados. Are they just posh mushy peas?
No, they're not. They are. I love them. And unfortunately, even worse, I don't like mushy peas.
Oh no! Oh dear me! You can't have avocado with fish and chips. You know, you do realise that?
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. No, you're right. But you can have avocado with bacon and tomato in a nice crusty loaf.
But it's not fish and chips.
No, it isn't fish and chips. No. The big question is haddock or cod, but that can be.
Yeah. Oh, I might slip that in for next week.
Yeah.
Round dice, are they allowed or banned on the Wargames table? Banned. Excellent. Nobody's allowed them yet, which is positive news. Do you like a good table in a set of rules, like a casualty table, things that you need to look up?
I do quite, yes.
Yeah.
Not too many, but I do like a table. Yes, I do like a table.
Controversial question: 28 mil is king? Yes or no?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, can I expand on that? I think maybe 40 mil is even more king.
That's it. We've had somebody argue that 54 mil was king, so 40 mil. I like that. There's a bit of leeway there.
I could discuss about 54 mil, but let's do the people with a yes or no there.
Playing a game, unpainted miniatures allowed on the table? Yes or no?
That's not even a question. How do you that? No.
The most important question of the evening: Bradford City or Leeds United?
Leeds United.
Oh dear.
Yes, that's from my days of youth. Leicester City fan now.
Oh well, yeah, definitely better than Leeds. Yorkshire or the other place over the hill?
Oh, Yorkshire.
Excellent. And final question, and we've already had a go at these tonight. So, Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil? Yes or no?
No, they're not. No.
Right. So we've got 65%.
65%.
That's not bad at all. I think Nick was 60.
Was he? Right.
Yeah. So that's all right. That's not bad at all.
So, a bit Yorkshire.
Yeah, that's 45% not Yorkshire. So that's not bad at all, that mate.
Oh, I'll tell my wife, who was born and bred in Wakefield, that I'm sorry. You'll be very pleased.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that, Dave. We are going to now make you relax and talk about something that you know about, which is terrain. So another willing participant in the Yorkshire Gamer quiz who did a cracking job there. Well done, mate. And you, like you say, you can 65% Yorkshire. You can tell did you say your missus comes from Wakefield?
Yeah, she comes from Wakefield.
She's a wakey lass.
She's a wakey lass. Yeah, aye. She was teaching me Yorkshire, but I thought I'd better not try it.
No, I've had a couple of attempts. I've had a couple. Nick did a bit at the start. He did his Ilkley Moor Bartet rendition, which was very good. Very good. Indeed.
Very good. Yeah.
So,
no, I've been left too long, I think, too.
Yeah. So this is why you're here, mate. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about terrain, and I am self-confessed probably the polar opposite to you in that I find it very difficult to get enthusiastic about terrain. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, whereas you find it difficult to get enthusiastic about painting figures. I can do that all day long. So how did it start, mate? How did you get into the terrain side of things?
Well, it just by accident, as I suppose most things. I just found that because I immediately found I enjoyed the looks of games. So like the cowboy game I saw in the 70s, and then you go to shows and you'd see these lovely boards, and then miniature Wargames, that first edition. I remember I was at college, I was at university then, because I walked into the W.H. Smith store, and there it was, and and there was this, just flicking through it, and there were these brilliant shots of lovely terrain by Peter Gilder, and then Ian Weekly articles and all that sort of thing, and it just sort of fed into me, and I just tried it, and I found I really enjoyed it, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wasn't bad at it from the start. It was just that I enjoyed it, and so I built. I started to build a house, and then I built a hill, and then a bit sunken lane, and this, that, and the other. And then as you start going to a club, and they're talking about doing demo games or participation games, stuff like that, and so you just get involved on the periphery at first, and just I'll make a house for it, or I've got an idea for this, and it just sort of built really from that way, and well, how it turned professional, that's one thing, but just I found I could organise and plan doing an 8 foot by 6 foot game with all the terrain. The guys could do the figures, in some cases I would get the figures done as well, and I just enjoyed the whole process. And then you go take it to Partisan again. Dunk. One reason why Partisan existed was for him to be able to get photos of good-looking games, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was his little photo show. Yeah,
it really was. And so we took those along, and being in Loughborough, and Newark wasn't far away, and so it just and don't wanted to photograph it again, what I was doing, and put it in the magazine, and that's it's quite a stimulus really to think, I'm okay at this, and people would like what I did, and it just. All of those little things kept nibbling away, and I never not enjoyed it. I always loved making it, and I think that's the key to it, isn't it? You love painting. You could paint all day because you love it.
Yeah.
And because you love it, you do it more, so you get better at it, and it's just a continually rolling progression.
Did you have a like a mentor or a teacher back in those days? Because I'm thinking like today, I mean, you did that interview with the terrain tutor who kind of does loads of videos on the internet. Well, do you remember where you learned techniques from? And was there anyone who...
I don't know. No. I mean, I think the Ian Weekly things in the magazines, in miniature modelling, and then in was it did he get into miniature? I don't know.
Was it Ian Weekly's Battlements or something like that?
It was something like that, wasn't it? Yes, and he used to do great articles and pictures of Warwick Castle, and and it was great. And Stan Catchpole was the Stan. Gosh, that name rings a bell. Anyway, but it was more that sort of thing, and I think I just almost there's almost maybe too much about now. So you can get too involved in looking at stuff, and I don't know, how do I do a river? So you look at 27 different ways of doing rivers, and they're all great. And Mel's great, and Luke at it was in Wakefield. They're all superb. But if you're not careful, you watch too much and you don't get on with it. And I think back when I was learning, and you just have to get on with it. You'd have to. The only way would be to ask someone, I guess, if you saw something lovely at a show. How do you do that? But I was too young to pluck up the courage to do that. So I don't know. I just sort of. I don't know. I can't. I just did it, and I just did it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it worked. Most times it worked. Sometimes it didn't. But because I enjoyed it, I didn't care. I just, why didn't that work? I'd try something else, and it just carried on. And so no.
So how did that then go from? We've got a display game. We need some buildings. Dave can do that. To I'm going to pay me gas bill doing this.
Well, it was. It was. I think there's some key moments really. there was one moment. This sort of sounds all corny and this sort of thing, but these are looking back. I'd put some American Civil War figures on the Bring and Buy stall in Derby, and I remember I went back to that stand to see if it had sold. And as I was there, the guy picked them up and said, "I'd like that. Who paints them?" And I said, "I do." And I got into a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And his name's Graham Campbell, and he runs now a painting company based out of Thailand.
Oh right, yes, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started painting for Graham, and I did lots of 15 mil, and I sort of got into a habit of and a discipline that he was finding he was getting frustrated with his work, and so we talked and things like that. So, and he was saying, "Well, you should do this for a living, you're good at it and that sort of thing." And then he asked me to do a French Indian fort in 28 mil with the terrain boards and everything like that. And I did it for him, and he paid me an hourly rate. I thought, and it just sort of, that's interesting. He took it to, it was Fiasco then in Leeds at the university.
Yep.
No, Sheffield.
Sheffield
Triples, when it was at the university, at the Octagon. And it won Best Show and things like that. And it just sort of, again. And at the same time, I'd been a print rep for 15 years. So I was selling, and I am not a salesman. And I don't know how I'd sort of dragged this career out for 15 years, but it was really coming to a head.
Yeah.
And I was finding it just, I've got to do something else. I'm stuck on all this, that sort of thing. And that weekend, so those things sort of set this up. The triples was on the Saturday and Sunday. It all went really well. I went in on the Monday and talked to my bosses then. It was just a small family business. Said, "I'm not happy. I'm thinking about leaving and making terrain for a living." And by the end of the week, I'd handed my notice in.
Wow.
And pretty much, it may be, but it all really snowballed very quickly. I'd also got a friend of mine who he was retiring at the same time, Mark, and so he was one things to what was going to fill his time. So he was keen to join. So we sort of talked it out. He could work a sort of website out, things like that. So it all sort of came together all at the same time. And then the guys said, "Well, you've got 3 months notice." So that's fine, Brill.
Yeah.
I talked to Duncan, and Duncan said, "This is what I'm doing." Duncan McFarlane.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm planning to do. So don't go full time. Don't you do it part time? My God, don't you? And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? And I said, "Look, can we do some photo shoots of stuff I've done?" So he got the photo shoots, and he got. I think I'd got a Wild West town that he photoed. He did it a special Sunday for us. It was brilliant of him, and he got these in the magazine all before I was still working my notice, and that got published. So, but then you do the photos, and it was months before it would get into the magazine. And then I left the work to go full time. A friend of mine had felt sorry for me and gave me some figures to paint, so I got 500 quid there. I still got a mortgage. My 2 boys were just starting secondary school. It was
big risk.
I mean, how I did it, I just do not know. Frances, my wife, just never let on that she was scared to death. She supported me completely.
Yeah.
And then my as it turned out, it all sort of works out. My replacement at work didn't fit in, so I'd gone away on holiday for 2 weeks. Came back, I got a phone call, said, "Look, the guy's not working out. Can you come back part time? Do 2 days of your stuff, 3 days with us."
Yeah.
And that really worked out, because it meant that all the bills were covered by my proper job, and so I didn't have the financial strain on the business straight away. The photos that Dunk took got into the magazine. They got over to America. 2 Americans rang me up, said, one guy said, I've seen the photographs of the Wild West town.
Yeah.
I've just had a bonus from work. I want you to do that for me again. I'll send you my bonus and we'll work our way through it. He said with 10 grand.
Wow.
with like just a series of emails and stuff like that. And that's, well, okay, we're on our way. And then another American, he'd seen a World War II thing. I said, I want that. And that was it, really. And I stayed part-time for just over a year before we just, again, no plan. Just one day I walked in, I said, I'm done. It's done. And that was it. And that was 19 years ago. And I've done it ever since.
Oh, which is pretty amazing.
I mean, I don't know how I made those series of decisions.
Yeah.
And how it all happened. But would I do it again now? I can't see myself. I can't believe I made the decisions I made.
Yeah.
And it all worked out.
But it's a fantastic it's a fantastic leap of faith to do something that you quite clearly love and enjoy doing, and make it put a roof over your heads as well. Amazing. And I've never had any time off with no work. Yeah.
Since ever.
Yeah.
Mark and I worked together for probably 8 to 9 years. Mark wasn't a model maker, so we were looking for other things to do, and that worked out brilliantly because we got involved in the 54 millimeter toy soldier market, which on the surface is very similar to.
That's huge, isn't it? That
Well,
market.
it's smaller. There aren't as many toy soldier collectors as there are Wargamers, but they spend more.
They spend a lot.
Bigger. They're limited edition, pre-painted.
Yeah.
And their hobby is collecting, and displaying. So it's ideal for lovely terrain. So they commission me for dioramas and things like that. And we wouldn't have got involved in that if we weren't looking for other things to do, because Mark wasn't, he wasn't totally, he wasn't the model maker. So. And Mark has left now. Because we started importing toy soldiers, which was quite successful, but one dealer took that away from us, and so Mark decided to call it a day. So it was just me for the last 10 years or so.
Well, all I can say is God bless rich Americans. And if there's any listening to this podcast who want to sponsor this podcast or me to paint anything for them, then please give me a ring. But I interviewed Pete Morby from Elite Miniatures a few episodes ago, and he wasn't brilliant with technology, so he said, just come down to the workshop, Ken. So I say, hey, no problems at all. And he's got a fantastic garage at the back of his garden with a big Wargames table in like his painting studio and sculpting area. And he was telling me how it was very similar to yourself. He started making his figures, and then one day, totally random, this guy rings up from the States and go, yeah, I'd like 50 billion Russian 28 mil. Yeah. and that paid to have that built. So it is remarkable how one decision by one person can change your life. Yeah.
And it really did. I mean, we went out to America as soon as we could to Cold Wars.
Yeah.
And we met them there, and I embarrassed them quite a lot by just saying how important they were to changing my life. And and Pete has the same story, and I'm sure a lot of guys in my boat, my situation, would a similar sort of thing. One key decision has just made it possible.
Yeah.
Made it easier, or whatever. It's amazing, really. I still I still can't believe how it's all worked out. But I'm now, people talk to me about, well, how did you do it, and this, that, and thing, and would you do it again, or would you recommend I do it, or stuff like that. I would recommend that sometimes that leap of faith is, it's so important because it frees you. It sort of, I mean, I had that conversation with my bosses, and they it all just, you have preconceived ideas and stuff like that, and suddenly by going a different way opens up doors or opens up opportunities and all sorts of stuff. It's remarkable. So
a regular thing I do on here is to kind of say thank you to the Wargaming wives and partners out there who are absolute gods when it comes to putting up with us, which is very true for many things. The work that you do now, then the terrain that you do now, is that solely Wargames based, or have you drifted off into when I think of a really good terrain, obviously other than yourself, I think of railway modelers. Have you ever done anything for railways at all?
No. Way back when I was starting, I thought, right, wargaming, because I know, but railway modelling, I thought rather grandly film, that sort of thing. And I thought making people's houses in miniature, and as a birthday present, that sort of thing. But wargaming and the toy soldier hobby has pretty much kept me busy. And I would like to do railway stuff, but the railways don't enthuse me. They don't give me a buzz at all. And I think if I did railway stuff, I'd have to do all the track and things like that, and that really, no, that isn't me at all.
Not you.
And so but I've never had to chase it, so it's never been a thing. The odd stuff, I've done a bit of commercial work. I did do something for TV. And then there was the Agincourt thing, which was non-gaming. I've done.
Didn't you do something with caravans?
I did, yes, with ABI vans up in Yorkshire. Yeah, the centre of the universe, I understand.
It is apparently.
Yeah, and so that was. I think I was recommended to them. They'd had this idea of making models of their vans and then putting them into dioramas, and that was great. That's been 2 years now we've done that. We're just waiting for the new catalogue to come out. And that's it's so different from working in the hobby, because you're dealing with, normally you're dealing with your customer is a fellow enthusiast. So it's not their job, it's their passion. And that's but dealing with advertising agency and that's their job. So there's a subtle difference there. But they have different expertises and different needs and stuff like that, and they're relying on you in a different way than a hobbyist. And then, of course, they get real top-notch photography in. They get an art director in. They get a proper studio for photography, and it's just so exciting. Well, so exciting. I mean, as exciting as photographing caravan models can get over a week, but it's brilliant, and I've really enjoyed it doing that. I wouldn't want to do it all the time, because I just love dealing with wargamers and toy soldier collectors. Really, that's I just love that sort of thing. But the odd different thing really was really lovely. Yeah.
Do you find inspiration, or do you get inspiration from other things like model railways, or does it come mostly from the wargaming community?
No, I do get inspiration from the model railways. Their quality of model making is high, isn't it? I mean, some of the stuff they can be more delicate with their model making, because you're not handling it and moving it from club night to club night and stuff like that. So I do, and I get quite a lot of my materials from the railway model hobby. But inspiration generally comes from the customer, because it's all bespoke stuff. So I don't make anything unless it's been ordered. Yeah. So that inspiration and enthusiasm and stuff comes from my customer. The problem with that is, of course, that I must have half a dozen new periods that I've started because of customers who, well, can you do these for me? Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. And before you know it, so that's there isn't a downside at all. But yeah, that you think I'm looking at my ships, my Napoleonic ships. That was definitely one of those for the customer. Yeah.
So that brings us quite nicely on to the next question I've got down here, and that's the process that's involved. So let's say I'm going to put a big Italian Wars game on at a show, and I come to you and I say, right, Dave, I want the Medici's Palazzo as a background for my game. How does it work? How does the process work?
Well, I ideally, to start with, I'd like some either photographs or some source material, just to get a feel of it. Yeah. But then I would also want to know practical things, because your game will have size restrictions, or you have a particular scenario involved, so you only need to be this size, or you're going to have you're probably not going to want an exact scaled reproduction of that. You're going to want compromises here and there. So it's a few emails backwards and forwards that way. I also quite early on like to talk just very roughly money.
Yeah.
Because it can be quite involved doing a quote.
Yeah.
And the enthusiasm of someone approaching me, I don't want the enthusiasm to get too high, and then I burst the bubble because it's going to cost way above what they want to spend. So I like to just try and give a rough idea, unless it's a regular customer who knows what sort of charges are involved. So and then that will say, yeah, that's fine, or no, can't do that, or well, I can do it for your budget, but we need to do this. So because it's all handmade, it's my time. These items aren't cheap. So I think that's important to get that out of the way straight away. And then it'll be a backwards and forwards thing, and I like to try and assess how important certain things are. So it might be the historical accuracy. So it might be important where the windows are and the details of the architecture. It might not be. It might just be can you do me something that looks like it, or that. So I trying to judge where that is. And over a period of quite a short time, usually, I'm in a position to be able to sketch something out and see where we are with that, and then it sort of comes together that way. Sometimes someone will come and they've drawn it all out, they've planned it all out, they know exactly what they want, how big they want it, and all that sort of thing. But usually it's a two-way process of discussing it. And toy soldier guys are slightly different to wargamers, because toy soldier guys will be, they might be inspired by something slightly different. They're not bothered about playing it. They want to make it look good. So do you want the whole building, or do you just want a facade, or do you want lots of area to display your figures, or do you just want what do you want in your display? Is it how high? I mean, I was caught out once by the height of a display. We didn't discuss that at all, and I built it and he couldn't fit it into his cabinet, and so that doesn't happen anymore. And so, but little things like that, it all become important. So, and it's trying to listen to what you want, and of course, when you talk about time, because my waiting list gets silly. Not silly. Sometimes it's silly all the time. And so, you look at when do you want it and that sort of thing. So it's just a question of going backwards and forwards until, and it can even change during the process, during the making of it. I'll try and send regular photos of it developing, you say, well, yeah, that's great, but can you do this or can you do that, and that sort of thing. So it depends on the customer, I suppose. If you leave it up to me to do it, that's great. But if you want to have input, then that's fine as well.
And have you worked from architectural plans? Of somebody sort of, here's a bunker from World War II, and I've got the plans the Germans did. Can you make that? No,
I don't think I have. I'm just trying to. The closest might be, I was trying to do Fort William Henry. But they weren't architectural plans. They were good line drawings. To try, because I mean, that sort of Fort William Henry, Fort Ticonderoga. I mean, the angles on that is, the star bits go off all over the place. They're really odd. But usually, I'm finding myself with a photograph of a building, and I'm trying to work out, well, if that door is 6 feet high, that means that's about 3 doors long. So that's going to be 18 feet long. So and then, I get a figure, and so it's usually that way around, and rather than a specific line drawing. And often the building has to be 8 inches by 6 inches. So then everything gets scaled to that. Or some guys like the footprint quite small, of a building. Others, if they're skirmishing, then they'll like it bigger. So yeah, but yes, I can't think of I don't think I've had architectural drawings. No, I think that would be,
because there are model makers, aren't there, that make like models of new housing estates and stuff like that are all exactly to a particular scale and that sort of thing. So that's not something that you've probably not had the pleasure of, but have been involved.
No, I suppose the closest was probably the caravans, really. But the caravans were, I have a friend who does all my laser cutting for me. And so he did the vans, and they supplied him architectural plans for those, because they needed to be spot on. But I trust Lee totally, to work it out, and if he had a problem, he'd get back to me. So I could just concentrate on the terrain. So that's probably the closest I've come to.
So that moves us nicely on to the materials of your trade. What's kind of your did you build from card? Do you build from MDF? What's kind of your signature dish, if you like?
Well, for most of my time as TM, I've worked in the loft, so I have no power tools as such. So MDF really is out. So I remember when I was a print rep. So I was going around selling print. I got some work out of Games Workshop when they were really, they were before they moved to their new headquarters and stuff like that. And I remember
after this show, you won't be getting any more.
But I remember I was walking round, and Dave Andrews was in one of the rooms, and he was making a building with foam board. And I remember that, and ever since I saw that, and I talked to Dave, and I keep in touch with Dave now. I use foam board, so that is my go-to thing. So all my buildings are a foam board, usually 5mm thick, sometimes 10mm, depending, but usually 5mm, and it cuts with a sharp scalpel. It's strong as long as you brace it properly. If you're putting clay on it or anything wet, because it might warp, but as long as you brace it properly, it doesn't. It's light, it's strong, and it takes anything. I just that's the go-to one. But then I'll use quite a lot of balsa wood for adding relief and detail. Plastic card I use quite a lot, and then for bricks and stuff like that, I'll carve my own bricks and stone. So I'll cover the foam board in clay, gas pronto, air dried clay, and then I'll carve whatever details from into that, which can take quite a long time. I don't know. Did you see Ian Smith's 40mm ACW game at Salute? It was a coastal fort, a lozenge-shaped coastal fort.
Yeah, no, I don't think I did see that.
No, and it was 5 feet long, 2 feet wide, shaped like a paracetamol, and the walls were about 18 inches high.
Yeah,
and all of that was carved brick, and that just took me for ages, and my fingers.
Yeah,
it was
I hope you charged him by the brick.
So, but it was just so that's how I don't know. I can just endlessly patience.
Yeah,
not a problem with that. It's weird. And now with tiling, I'll cut plastic card into rectangles and place individual tiles on for the roof, because I don't like strips of cardboard. To me, it looks like strips of cardboard.
Yeah.
So I like the individual. Again, they take ages to do, but it's just I don't know. I can just get on with it. It's weird.
and have you introduced 3D printing at all into your repertoire? Have you used it to make bits and pieces at all?
I have. I have got a 3D printer. I don't use it much. I have no design. I can't design with software, so I have to use existing files. I haven't used it probably for months, so I don't know if I can remember how to use it. But I've used it for the cornice and things like that for buildings.
Yeah.
I find that okay. It can't cope with really detailed stuff. It's not that good, and I haven't dialed it in well enough, I don't think. But it's fine for what I need it for. But it's in danger of becoming a hat stand rather than a 3D printer if I'm not careful.
So you'd rather make a chimney pot than print it? I would.
Yeah. And I do. Yeah.
I don't think you can take away that hand-built craftsman thing for
me.
No,
I don't think so. But although I do sometimes think when I am making the 500th chimney stack, that maybe I should 3D print them.
Yeah.
I'm not organised enough, I just have to make it all by hand if I can. It's just the way I am. Yeah, just the way I am. So I have done. I mean, I use laser, the MDF, laser cut stuff a lot. But I don't do it myself. I get Lee to do it, and he does all my windows. A lot of what am I looking at the minute? He did an orangery for me for a 20mm mansion I'm making. He's done all sorts of stuff, balconies, railings, all sorts of stuff. So I use that a lot.
Is that something you've thought about? Maybe using like an MDF as a frame to build over. I've seen people do that on Twitter. I think
what MDF? What for buildings?
Yeah, kind of have a frame of a building and then build up around that frame.
No. I again, maybe how I design something. I won't draw it out and work out what I've got to cut out. I'll design it as I draw it out on the foam board. So I don't know. I can visualize the 2D flat as a 3D thing. I don't know. To get Lee to make an MDF structure for me would sort of go against how I design.
How you
stuff.
Work, yeah, that makes sense.
So I make the foam board walls, and then I'll add the structure inside with more foam board, and it's incredibly strong.
Yeah.
So that's how I do that.
Well, we've gone this far, and we haven't spoken about the obvious thing, and I hope you don't mind talking about this because I'm sure you've talked about it 1,000 times, and it's a bit like being in an 80s band that had a massive hit.
One hit wonder.
So I'm going to talk about your Agincourt project with the Perrys, and which I will be proud to tell the listeners is currently in the Armouries in Leeds, in Yorkshire. So it was down south, somewhere south of Sheffield, at some
It was
some smelly old dirty airy castle somewhere, and they've brought it up somewhere nice now to Leeds. So how did you get involved in that, Dave? Just tell us the story.
Well, that was the initial contact was through the toy soldier hobby. Someone at the Royal Armouries was a collector, and he was looking. He'd had this idea for a model and was looking for model makers. So that was an initial contact. But then after that, it went through all the normal processes of tendering and winning the tender and that sort of thing. So that was all very alien to me. But it was the hobby at first that made the initial contact. And the initial idea was they were going to make it. I have a habit of, once I've done a job, I tend to lose the details.
Yeah.
So it's currently 4 meters by 2 meters, but we were talking maybe going, was it 8 meters by 4? Something, it was going to be massive. I mean, it's big now, but it was going to be massive. And then it shrunk down to as it is now. And it was, that was another one of those things you sort of pinch yourself, because we went down, we were having meetings at the tower. So, the entrance to the tower now, you get the tickets, and you walk through the drawbridge under a gate, and then you're in. We were having meetings above that gate and we could look at people coming in and out. And then, we had at one time we had sandwiches on the roof.
Oh, very nice.
And it was, you'd think, I just make models for toy soldier guys here, and I'm in the Tower of London, with Alan and Michael Perry, and very important, well-known historians, and talking. It was just unreal, really, unreal, and brilliant. And I think it took a couple of years to do it. So go on, ask me questions rather than me blabbering on.
No. So. What was the brief then? Was it we want a field with a few trees and a bit of mud on, or was it a lot more detailed than that? Were you kind of involved in how the figures was presented as well?
Well, it was quite fluid at first. So initially it was a much bigger diorama. A lot of experts on Anne Curry and things like that, who world renowned experts in medieval history and things like that. So it sort of developed throughout the project. I remembered various discussions on whether we should have buildings for the villages, Agincourt, and I can't remember the other one on the other side.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then there was the castle or the tower, wasn't there, that's mentioned in Shakespeare, whether we should have that. And then there's a road going across there, that whether we should have that. How many figures, the ratio of the French to the English and Welsh, and that side. All sorts of discussions we had. And in the end, because there's doubt as to where it was fought. They're not sure whether they've got it in the right spot. So right, let's take out the roads, because that then reduces the spot. Keep the trees either side. We won't put the buildings in. And again, we discussed about the castle, but again, there wasn't enough evidence that we felt that to put it in. And then so it turned in. We were happy with the muddy field. That was pretty much given.
Yeah.
And then the final discussion really was, the big discussion was the ratios of figures or the ratios of the two armies. The traditional field is badly outnumbered, but felt it wasn't, and things like that. So we were discussing all that. I found that fascinating, and probably the biggest lesson, because really, I mean, if you break it down, it's a fairly straightforward modelling job.
Yeah.
It's a muddy field, but what I learned was that again, it's the different approaches. I mentioned how dealing with the customer as a hobbyist is different from a commercial customer, and Anne and the Royal Armouries were different again, because they all had reputations, and they could put an argument together. They'd write books, and so they could say, well, so and so says this, and it's likely to be this, but there's this source that suggests this, and there's this source that suggests this. So they can over a publication create an argument for why they come to this conclusion. At first, I didn't click on this, and I got quite frustrated with trying. And all I want to know is, where do you want this?
Yeah.
How do you want this? And it occurred to me that I was asking her to make a definitive decision without any sort of supporting argument, and it was going to be placed at the Tower of London and then at the Royal Armouries for as long as it is. And I was asking her to make very definite decisions without yes, but it could be this, it could be that, it could be this. And that once I realised that I was asking her quite a lot, really. It was a tough decision, because I'm used to that sort of thing, and I'm a model maker. I'm not a historian, so my reputation was in the model, not in the presentation of the battle. And we did it, and it came out, and it was in the public, and I think over 1 million people saw it at the Tower of London. So there's a lot of opinion and things like that that you just look at this thing, and that was, well, I disagree with that, or I agree with that, or no, there's no way the French cavalry did that, or no, and couldn't, or none of the experts could sort of argue back. There wasn't a rounded argument in it. It was a presentation. It was our interpretation of the battle, and I found that really interesting. And
did you think? Did you think at the time? Because I'm thinking of the famous diorama at the Armouries, the Sideborn model of Waterloo, of how this could be around for a very long time, and people going, oh, it's the Marshal Perry model, when we're all long gone from this place. That has crossed my mind. And because it's certainly the most seen diorama that I've ever done and will ever do. By zillions of people. And you go and whenever I'm in Leeds, if I'm in that area, I'll pop in and see it, and I'll go and see the Waterloo model, and I think, will the Agincourt model be the Perrys and Marshall model in 100 years' time, or will it just disappear? It does cross your mind, but do you look at the Waterloo model and go, that's crap compared to mine?
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing what he could do. With the materials he had. I mean, those the swords are little pieces of silver, aren't they? It's amazing.
It is an amazing thing.
And I had all sorts of stuff I could call on, and he didn't. And I mean, he did it all by. I understand the topography of it is really, really accurate and remarkable for the tools he had at the time. I just feel chuffed. That my model.
Well, proper Yorkshire word there, chuffed.
Yeah.
Well, that's proper praise. That is.
Yeah.
So, wasn't there something I heard somewhere about it having to be cut in half or something to go through a window or something?
Well, yes, because it was at the Tower of London. It was being displayed on the top floor of the White Tower.
Oh,
so
right.
The main, So, and you can't knock the White Tower about. You can't. I don't know whether they were pulling our legs or whatever, but it's a criminal offence if you damage the tower.
Ah, right. Okay.
So it wasn't built for getting a diorama up to the top floor. So the only way to do it was to winch the pieces up to the top outside and in through the top floor windows, and the windows were about I'm not exact, but about 2.5 meters wide. No, is that right? But no, 4 feet wide, something like that.
Yeah.
And then immediately after the windows was arches all the way along, and they're a bit narrower. So we had to the boards had to fit through those. So we decided it was a 4 meters by 2 meters table, and they were split into 4 2 meters by 1 meter strips. so they could all be winched up. So we took the we got the van, drove down. That was quite a nervy trip. You know, it'd be a disaster if someone thumped into the back of us. We had to go down on the Sunday because it was a dead early start on the Monday, and it was pissing down with rain Monday morning. We knew that this was the way it was going to be, and and we thought that I'd made boxes specially for it to transport it, and the boxes were too wide to go through the window. So we had to take the diorama pieces out on the in the front, in the courtyard of the tower, put them into the skip that was being winched up. Thought, well, if it's raining, it's got all this work. What's going to happen with it? But fortunately, it all cleared up by the time it was our turn to take the stuff up, and it was all fine. And then we found ourselves on the top floor of the White Tower, on the floor, and there was Alan, Michael, and myself waiting our turn to start installing the model into the display case. And we were just lying on the top floor of the White Tower, sitting there in amongst all the armour and the history, and just quietly, again, one of those moments. Wow. It was wonderful.
Was it all when it was being winched up? Were all the figures on the boards, or
everything? All we had to do was put the boards together and fill the gaps. Fill the gaps. Everything was done back here in Loughborough.
Fantastic.
So all the trees were in and everything. So it was relatively easy. I think the hardest bit, of course, it was a ploughed field, so we had to try and match the furrows over the gaps. And I think maybe with hindsight, I'd have suggested maybe it wasn't ploughed; it was just muddy.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, that's with hindsight. That was the hardest bit, really. Yeah. Just trying to hide the joins.
Well, it's something you should be very proud of, mate. It's an absolute superb bit of kit.
Thank you.
Proper job. We've been going for a couple of hours, but there's a couple of things.
Have we?
Yeah, we have, mate. We have. It's 10 o'clock.
Wow.
So there's a few things I want to cover before we go, because I don't want you to just be Mr. Agincourt and nothing else. And looking up and down your Facebook page, you've done some stuff with King and Country.
Yes.
Who, for listeners who may or may not know, are they 54 mil? They're quite old.
They are. Well, they're 60 mil, really.
60 mil.
It's 1/28 scale.
Yeah, and they're kind of a collector's thing, aren't they? They're pre-painted, but they're
limited edition.
Quite realistic compared to the toy soldier that we were talking about earlier on, who were more of a stylistic piece, weren't they, compared to?
That's right. Yeah, there's the glossy ones, which are your traditional toy soldier, and then the matte one, which really King and Country invented as a part of the toy soldier hobby, I think.
Yeah.
Years ago. So yes. Go on. Sorry.
So just tell us a bit about how you've got involved with King and Country and some of the stuff that you've done for them.
Well, that was again through. I mentioned that we used to import 54 mil figures, and they were matte ones. Again, similar style to King and Country, but they were by a guy called John Jenkins, who was a Welshman but based in Hong Kong, and he started with doing some 28 mil samurai buildings, Japanese buildings, resin ones, lovely, and we imported those. And he kept nudging us, saying, try the 54s. No, there's not a market. But we eventually did. And so that got us into the matte limited edition toy soldier guys. And so we met King and Country because they were the premium biggest manufacturer in the hobby. And I remember we went to the first show, selling these stuff, and I made a bit of diorama to go on it to display it, because we were selling the figures, but I was also selling the service, and so it just carried on from there. We made friends with King and Country UK, because King and Country are based in Hong Kong. And Andy from King and Country Hong Kong would come over in December to the Toy Soldier show in London, and we got to meet, and then and it just sort of carried on from there. And I started doing work for King and Country UK. I did all their diorama boards for their shows, and then there's First Legion, who are they're a notch above King and Country,
right? Okay,
both in price and quality. I mean, have a look at some of their stuff.
Yeah.
It's stunning. And so I've done some work for them and things like that. And then Andy, and now I do work for King and Country for their customers. So he will get a commission and then pass it on to me. He'll work with his customer, and then he'll give me a very lovely drawing. Pretty much it's all sorted out. So we were talking about architectural drawings. Probably that's the closest. It is still a artistic piece, but that gives, and then we talk about it and go from there. So I've done 5 or 6 pieces, I'd have thought, for them. And the nerviest thing is that I have to ship everything to Hong Kong. So the last piece, the smallest piece I've done is 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, probably. So shipping that is a bit nerve-wracking.
I can imagine.
So so that's how that's how I got involved with them. And I love doing stuff for the Toy Soldier guys, because it's a big scale. You can be more delicate with it because they just generally want to just display with it rather than play with it. That's when we were talking about 54mm ACW. I did dabble in 54mm because of being involved in the 54 Toy Soldier thing, but I found that I'd make terrain, but it just, size-wise, it's massive. So I just had nowhere to store it, so I had to give up on that period as a wargaming thing.
Because there's I think there was like a Napoleonic one that I've seen that you did, and was there a World War II like a victory parade or something similar? If I can remember. That's
right. Well, I just do the terrain, and then Andy dresses them and photographs them with his figures. So that Napoleonic one, was it the farm?
Yes, that was the one.
Like, it looked like the end of Hougoumont, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. And so we used the rest of it is just made up. But he put Napoleonic figures in there. He put late war, World War II. He put early war, World War II. Did he do Franco-Prussian? So he was trying to illustrate how versatile that diorama was. Because you spend quite a lot of money on it. You don't want to you want to be able to use it for various things. And then and I've done some World War II ones that it's a facade, so 4 feet of buildings at the back. It's probably only 6 to 8 inches deep. A nice display area and a river in the front. One of the biggest ones I did for him was based on Saving Private Ryan, the final scrap.
Oh right,
in Rommel, is it? The bridge. Yeah. And that was great because it had to be. What was the size? Was it 6 by 3, 4 by? Anyway, it was limited by the size of the diorama. So we had to squeeze in as much as we could and still make it usable for display, but also make it obvious that it was a Saving Private Ryan. So that was brilliant. I've got to watch the film. What do you mean I've got to watch the film for
research?
For research. Oh no! So and once I had to do that for the Magnificent Seven. Someone asked me to make the church that they're defending in the Magnificent Seven, and he goes up and rings the bell and stuff like that. It's quite interesting. If you look carefully, you don't quite get to 360 degrees around the church. You do nearly, but I couldn't find so I had to watch it a couple of times before I was happy with.
What do you think? What do you think's the biggest piece that you've ever been commissioned to do?
The biggest piece. Well, probably the biggest table was by a guy who lives in Nantwich, and he's been to Salute and won Best in Game with it a couple of times, and it's sort of developed over 4 or 5 years. So there was terrain boards and town, and then it turned into more terrain boards, and then a walled town with a harbour and things like that. And it went from English Civil War to World War II, and that was sort of large area that developed over time. Another one, 40 mil one for Ian Smith. He put big games on at Salute. But they were, again, that was lots of terrain boards, and then there was a monastery, and I'm doing a wall town for him now. But probably, I mean, the Alamo I've done a few times, and that's big.
Yeah, you don't quite realise how big it is, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done that in. What have I done it in? I've done the chapel in 54 mil. I've done the whole thing in 15. I've done the whole thing in 25. I've done the whole thing in 40 mil for Jed at Gringo 40. That was at Salute one year, and then the whole thing in 54. So there.
You'd be an expert Alamo maker.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's I really enjoy making those because it's just a load of adobe buildings, other than the flat top roofs, other than the chapel.
Yeah.
So I enjoy making that. So that's probably one of the biggest individual pieces.
And what about the most unusual? Have you ever been asked to make something and you've gone, what?
I once was asked to make, just a really funny shaped hill, totally impractical. It was like 4 foot round, but like 2 feet tall. So, I mean, imagine the gradient on that.
Yeah,
I mean, totally impractical as a gaming piece. So that was quite weird.
It sounds like we mentioned this last week, last episode. I can't remember why. The guy who builds the huge mountain in his living room in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, really, honestly, I probably that's one of those things that I should maybe have. Are you sure? But no, just think what other. I mean, I've done some. I find fantasy and science fiction quite tough, and unusual. I'm not very good with imagination.
Yeah,
I like historical. So I'm okay doing Lord of the Rings. So I feel that's sort of historical fantasy.
Yeah.
But I have done a 40k table, and I found that really, really tough. The most unusual thing. I don't like doing more than 2 or 3 of anything, really. So, so almost everything is unique.
Yeah.
Oh, there must be something. I can't. Nothing
springs to mind.
No.
So we'll just kind of wrap up there, mate. What if people want to get hold of you then? I'm not going to mention. Well, I wasn't going to mention this, but your website. I don't think it's been updated for a while, has it?
I know. It's probably. What do you reckon? I think the first sentence is "Welcome to 2014" or something. Is it?
I think it's 2013 actually, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say anything. But, you know.
Well, I mean, the positive side of that is that I haven't got the time to amend it, and I don't need. And I don't need that. It sounds wrong, but it's not. I'm so busy. You don't need. It's there, and people will contact me through there. Yeah, and it just. I mean, you can contact me through it.
Yeah.
I do have to update it because my hosting company is closing down at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I do have to do something with it.
Well, you'll be able to change it from shillings and pence to new money then, won't you?
What I will do next time, rather than put any date reference, I'll just say, "Here I am."
Here I am. Yeah.
If you need me, email me. No. Contact me here. So that's probably the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very diligent with it for years, and then it just. Yeah.
Well,
so apologies.
You know, if you, I thought I might have a laugh with that when I brought it up.
Yes, deservedly. I guess.
Yeah. You're on Facebook, aren't you? You've got a presence there.
I am, and I find that far more. It's instant and easy to. I can just take a few snaps and post it straight away, and that works. So, I'm umming and ahhing really whether I mean, do you think I need a website? I don't know. I think I do.
Yeah, it's kind of a presence, isn't it? That's there and for people to find. And have you ever thought about widening out and doing tutorial videos or anything like that, or are you happy in your own space?
I'm happy in my own space. I have thought about it because I do enjoy. I don't have any secrets. I'm happy to talk about it, about exactly what I do. So I think I would enjoy the first 2 or 3, but there are challenges doing it regularly.
Yeah,
and pressures and stuff like that. And if I was twiddling my thumbs, I'd give it a go maybe, but I'm not. And I enjoy doing these sort of things, talking about it occasionally.
Yeah,
really enjoy, and I enjoy talking to people at shows and happy to show people how to do stuff. But no.
Well, that's brilliant.
Leave it to Mel and to Luke. And
to the experts, in that sort of stuff. So we'll finish off there, mate, and I have for people an opportunity to ask me a question at the end if you've got one.
I was thinking. I mean, I did think just the haddock or cod, but
well, cod.
I couldn't. Cod.
Cod. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was when I grew up. It was all cod rather than haddock, and then we had a bit of a tiff with Iceland or something, and they were fighting in the North Sea, weren't they? The cod wars, and we all suddenly went to haddock then.
Oh, I always thought up north it's haddock, and down south it's cod. That's what I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And so fish and chips in Hull was always haddock.
Yeah, I always remember cod, and then it suddenly changed to haddock one day. And I remember seeing pictures on the news of the old Leander class frigates smashing into Icelandic fishing trawlers and all that sort of thing.
So are you back to cod now?
No, we're on haddock now. We're on haddock.
It's stayed as haddock, hasn't it?
It's stayed as haddock. And,
good.
So, well, if that's your question, mate, I'm quite happy with it. I was
trying to think.
That's a good one. That's brilliant. Well,
no, seriously, no. Yeah. If I was going to say, with big games,
yes,
you love big games and stuff like that.
God,
What's your top 3 tips? You've asked, what makes a successful big game? Can you give me three things?
Three.
5. What's your
planning? Planning number one. Decide what you're going to do, how are you going to do it, and break it down into small sections. So, if I'm going to do Pavia, for example, the big Italian wars battle, I'm going to mark down all the troops I need, all the terrain I need, and then I'm going to put it into bite-sized chunks and do that, and then I'm going to do the next bite-sized chunk rather than tackling it. It's psychological because you are tackling the whole project. Do it that way. Number 2, I would say, is get your mates involved. A big project is so much easier with a group of friends who are each. You kind of end up in like a little mini arms race, don't you, with your mates going, "Oh, I've got 6 units of gendarme," and you go back home and you go, "Oh, shit, I've only got 4. I'm going to have to pay at least another 3 for next week."
Yeah.
So and going back to what you said earlier on, make it something that you enjoy and you want to do. And I think those are the main things.
Well, when does the idea of how to run the game and make it fun and engaging for everybody for the whole weekend or for the duration of the game, how do you think of that consciously, or does that just come from experience that we need things happening everywhere?
That for me, that tends to be one of the last things that I do. I get it ready to go, more or less, all the figures done, terrain ready, and then I think, right, how are we going to play this game, and how are we going to make it fun? and interesting. And you'll always find, because at the moment I'm working on the Italian Wars Battle of Fornovo, which is the first big battle in the Italian Wars, and there's little parts of that battle. So they're crossing a river and the river was starting to flood. So you start to introduce that as a variable into your game. And then you've got one commander who was going off and charging into things when he should have actually been at the back ordering things forward. So you kind of you look at those bits when you read an account of a battle that interest you. And then you kind of go, well, if I bring that into the game, everyone's going to go, oh God, yeah, I remember reading about this.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? And I had a bit of drama's probably a bit too much of a word, but to do that and then be prepared when you're running a game to be that outgoing person to encourage people and have suggestions maybe for things for people who are like sat at the back, maybe I'm not sure about this period, I don't really know what to do, and then just have a word and kind of G them on. That's probably what I kind of do. But
do you go on, sorry.
The planning for the scenario is one of the last things that I do.
Right. And do you plan for the number of people? So are you strict with, so if you think this can take 10 people, I don't know, what are you, if 12 people turn up on the day, do you say, well, no, this is for 10?
No,
because I found some big games, you can you plan it for so many people, don't you? And then more turn up, and then it just becomes too big and it becomes too unmanageable. So I tend
to plan for a minimum. So what I'll do, so when we did Jutland, for example, I needed 6 players minimum, because I knew that would give each one of those players quite a large force, but a manageable force. And then in my mind, I thought, right, if we get 8, what are those extra 2 going to do? And so I think I've got to have a minimum of this number of people, and then think about how to break down stuff if it goes above that. That's the way I work it in my head. Do it that way around.
So you're sort of ready for more, or
there's always going to be a limit, but then I don't think I've ever reached that point, because what we've got here with the guys who I game with regularly, who will do these big games, they're the ones who will kind of go, okay, I'll step back and let somebody else play what I was going to play, and I'll umpire and join in and help and kind of keep the atmosphere going, rather than somebody who's new maybe into game. Because what used to happen was the new player, like, you would sit there and watch all weekend like you did and not get involved, and I'd rather have the new player leading the French gendarmes over the ford and getting that excitement, so that they come back next time.
I think that's good advice, because I think it's some of the games I've got involved with have just got too big by accident, really, and then you lose control, don't you? And I guess the more times you do it, the more times you run them and organise them, the easier it gets to get that unforeseen thing sorted out, and to plan for the unforeseen things.
Because our regular small games are on a 12x6 with 6 players.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
so how often do you play? Do you play at all evenings, or are you always sort of weekend things?
We're normally. I work shifts, so it's normally a Sunday. But if I'm working on a Sunday, then we'll do an evening. But I've got a permanent table here, so it's always set up. So there's no there's no rush, and one of the things that we enjoy about our gaming is that you can talk rubbish about trains or whatever one of the people wants to talk about that week, and we have a leisurely fish and chip lunch on a Sunday, and if there's a Grand Prix on and we watch it and it's exciting, there's no rush to go upstairs.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's very, very enjoyable. Very,
very
enjoyable.
Yeah. I suppose that's the thing with the club. You know, you've got the doors open at 10, and it closes at 5, and that, you know, and you've got to set up and put down in that time as well. So
it very much changes how your gaming mind works, if you like.
I mean, how do you know, if you took, you know, you took your Jutland to shows, you said, how does that change it? Because you know, if you do that at your home table, you can do that over 5 weekends.
Yeah.
But you've got, so do you simplify it? And
it was only ever viable for a 2-day show because of the size of the action. So that kind of limited to triples and derby. Now, of course, triples has gone, and I'm struggling to think. Yeah, I'm struggling to think of a 2-day show off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And that's where those games from the sods that we spoke earlier on, and those huge games, that they thrived in those 2-day arenas because it's a big, like you were saying for Salute, it's a big ask to go all the way down, put it all up, play it 6 hours, talk to members of the public, keep them interested, and then pack it up and go home, all in one day. So I think the death of the 2-day show has caused problems for the big games, which is a real shame. But there is loads of people out there who are like us in a little bunker with a 12x6 table and 6 to 8 guys and girls who come round every week and play. And a lot of them are your clients by the sound of it.
Yes. No, I think that's probably what I miss. Or not, I don't. But yes, that's a facility I haven't got open to me really. Yeah. I don't. Yes, I didn't think I'd miss it, but talking about it, yes, I do miss that. I do miss that. But yeah, anyway, that was more than one question. Sorry about that.
It was, no worries. Well, we'll say good night to the audience.
Yes.
So good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you. Totally enjoyed that.
So that was a right cracking episode there with David, and a lovely interview. Bit of mischief at the start there with Games Workshop, and at the end there, David started interviewing me, which was lovely, and as it was all relevant big game stuff, I've left it in. Once again, failing to get under the 2-hour mark that I try and set for these interviews. But never mind, I'm kind of guessing if you've got to 2 hours, you'll do another 10 or 15 minutes. So thank you for bearing with us. And if you sat there painting, I hope you cracked through a couple of units or some figures during the course of this podcast. Next episode coming up, episode 13, is one of the 2 new formats I'm going to try out over the coming months. And this one is going to be a bit of a catch-up. So I'm going to do some short interviews with a number of people I've had on the show before, just covering updates really on where they are with things. So one of the people I'm going to speak to is Mark Freeth from the Wargames Holiday Centre. When I spoke to him in episode 5, we were still in COVID, and although he had plans for games down at the Holiday Centre, he hadn't been able to do so. But he's done at least 2 that I'm aware of since lockdown has begun to ease. So I thought it'd be great for everyone to catch up with him, see how he's getting on. And there'll be a couple of other guests. And so there won't be the usual format. It will be a series of shorter interviews, so that you're kind of up to date with all the people or some of the people that have been on the show in the past. The other format is going to be one I'm hoping to do in the first episode of October. I've got 2 very special guests coming on for that one. Two people who you probably wouldn't associate with coming on this podcast because of its topic, but I think it's going to work really well and it's going to be a great mix. So there'll be more news about that shortly. But the main thing is that those two people have been made aware and they are going to do the podcast. So that's going to be great. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time with the catch-up episode, which I hope you're really going to enjoy. Until then, see you.